Okay, everybody, we are back at it today. We are getting closer and closer to the college football playoff national championship game. Yesterday, we spoke with someone from Notre Dame. Today, we have the esteemed and always knowledgeable Tim May from Lettermen Row to talk about Ohio State. Tim, how are you doing today?
Good. When you said esteemed, I thought I was a clam or something. Steamed clams. I'm ready to go though, baby.
Yes, that could have been on the dinner menu last night, so that
Yes.
would have been something.
Yes.
Um,
In Chattanooga,
so
that
so
would be really rolling the dice. But go ahead, Dave.
Yes, yes. So let's get into it. So Ohio State in the college football playoff so far, the first two games, they just kind of got out of the gates really fast and overwhelmed their opponents before they knew what hit them. Texas, they scored on the first drive, then they bogged down a little bit. Do you think that they are going to need to kind of hit the accelerator and get out to the kind of start that they had in the first two games just because Notre Dame has thrived on tight situations and being close in the fourth quarter and all that? How imperative is it for OSU to get off to a fast start?
Well, you know the answer to that. It's always imperative for either team to get off to a fast start. But you're right. I mean, you don't want to mess around with a team like Notre Dame, which the term I use is they have a way of manufacturing points almost out of thin air. And people have watched the first three games of the playoff have seen that with them. Against Georgia, even against Penn State, all of a sudden a Penn State defensive back falls down and Notre Dame gets a touchdown. And they're back in it to win it. So it's always imperative. I mean, what happened to Ohio State more than anything else against Texas was it got off to a touchdown start, and then it had what 9 penalties through the course of the game, and most of those
Yeah.
were on the offensive side and bogged down what were also other promising drives. They did score three touchdowns with their offense, including a 7 minute 45-second drive, which is kind of anti to the lightning uh,
Right.
to the lightning kind of drive or plays they've had of the first 2.5 games. But they turned that into an all-day rain kind of drive. But we all know how they got their last touchdown, and that was at the end of a goal line stand. So I think Ohio State's capable of playing with anybody. I mean, excuse me, Ohio State's capable of playing anybody in any kind of situation. But of course, the ideal thing would be to get a big lead. Notre Dame's got one of the best defenses in the country. Texas had one of the most talented defenses in the country, and Ohio State still found a way. So I'm answering your question roundabout because I think all of us get impatient to just let the game play out, right? And the last time Ohio State played in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, it had a two-touchdown lead going into the fourth
Hmm.
quarter against
Yep.
Georgia and blew it. So that's the main thing you don't want to do is if you got a lead going into the fourth quarter, is blowing it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and the difference is though, obviously, that Georgia offense had some playmakers. This Notre Dame offense, while it's efficient and it has Riley Leonard to worry about and Jeremiah Love, I don't think anyone's going to mistake this one for say 2019 LSU or anything like that.
No,
Um,
but the
w-
Great House kid found a way to make a play. That's the point
yes,
with a team like you're
yes,
talking about. It was just like the Michigan game. They let Michigan hang around and missed two makeable field goals and couple of chances to take control of that game
oh yeah,
and lost it. I mean, if you mess around and give a team a shot in the fourth quarter, anybody can win.
yes. So was the Texas game the way it was 14-14 in the fourth quarter after having the blowouts? Do you think that in retrospect that was probably good for Ohio State? I always say that it gave the coaches enough to harp on with the penalties you talked about. So many of them were of the false start variety. They had second and 20 instead of first and 10,
Yep.
and it kind of short circuited drives. In hindsight, do you think that this was good? It showed that they could win a tense game, make a play when they had to in the fourth quarter, and end up coming out on top.
Yeah, any lesson learned, I think, is a good thing. What they learned more than anything was you can't have stupid penalties, and you could argue about a couple of those penalties, but most of them you couldn't, right? And
Right.
I mean, it just this brother. You've been around football. It just reproves those coaching cliches. No penalties, no turnovers. Uh, Play a clean game, and you got a shot. I don't think anybody's debating that. From a roster standpoint, Ohio State is totally the more talented team going into this national championship game. But you can still, the big line by Ryan Day is, they're worried about Ohio State, not Notre Dame, in terms of they're worried about execution and stuff. And when you let any of that slide, you leave a team in the game. So yeah, I mean, those are lessons learned more than they are, "Whew, man, we passed that test, we're good to go." No matter how many times you climb Mount Everest, it's still a damn hellacious climb, and
Yes. Yeah.
you may have learned that you should have brought an extra oxygen bottle, but did you? So um,
Right.
those are the things. They know there's one more mountain to climb in this situation, and it's a toughie.
Yeah, definitely. So Will Howard, he was great in the first two games. I know that if you go by ESPN's total QBR, he was 1-2 in the Tennessee and Oregon game. He was good, but not quite as good against Texas. Through the interception when he got pressured, was harassed a little bit more than usual. But he did manufacture a touchdown drive in the fourth quarter, and if you look at some of his numbers, um, he has not thrown an interception in the fourth quarter this season, and he's completed 66%. I know that a lot of
Yeah.
times when the chips are on the line and you need to make a play, some quarterbacks can do it, some can't. What do you think is, I guess, going into this game, it certainly looks like Will Howard is the type of guy that you would want to have if it does get to be kind of a phone booth crunch time game. Will Howard seems like the guy that you would want to have on your side.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much delivered what was expected of him when they got him out of Kansas State this time a year ago, and I think he's delivered in terms of proving some things to himself. I mean, give him some weapons and a little bit of time to throw. And, I think he's as good as anybody in the country. I mean, I really do, the way he's made plays. I mean, he had 6 games of 80% completion percentage or better
Mhm.
this year, which I think is an Ohio State record. And
Yeah.
that includes a lot of big time quarterbacks, not the least of whom was CJ Stroud. And but uh, I think he showed his worth on that 4th and 2 when he ran a little play action. I think a little play action show to Quinshawn Judkins, and then basically almost followed him through the hole and broke free. And like he said, as he broke free, he's expecting somebody to hit him, and nobody did. So he kind of leaned into it a little bit. Nobody hit him, and it's one of those classic bumbling, rumbling, stumblings. He should have scored it. He could have scored a touchdown on that play, but it was on that 7-minute, 45-second drive we're talking about, and he still got 16 yards and just proved, that one other thing about him we haven't seen a whole lot of this year, his ability to run. I mean, it was
Mhm.
as Carnell Tate was saying to us the other day. I mean, that's boy, you saw him play at Kansas State, watch his highlights, and he expected 4 or 5 of those kind of runs every game, but he hadn't really had to do that because of guys like Carnell Tate and Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith. And what he did really well the other day was prove the point that Ohio State has 3 of the more talented wide receivers in the country. You stop A, you still got to stop B and C, and that's
Mhm.
Emeka Egbuka and Carnell Tate. We all know about Jeremiah Smith, and I think that was an error on Ohio State's part about maybe not trying to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith a few more times than they did. They only tried 3, and he caught 1. But the bottom line is you've got 2 other guys who are highly, highly sought after wide receivers coming out of high school and are mature dudes now. And but he has learned how to. I'm talking about Will has learned how to use everybody, including the tight ends. Tight ends caught what 6, 7 passes
Mhm.
against Texas. It's funny. You know this, man. You covered a lot of football. It's funny how the tight ends get more catches in big games. That's because nobody ever covers a tight end,
Right.
as Tim May always says.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you realize that when you really need them. Just ask Tom Brady. But he's been able to spread the ball around, and with 2 very talented running backs, it'll be interesting if they can get to all that against this really talented but banged up Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And he was so calm on that play just before halftime when
Yeah,
they set up the screen to Travion. Texas brought some pressure. He just kind of let them use it against themselves, flipped it off to Travion, and he just waited, found the hole, and burst through. I think that was kind of an encapsulation because after that first drive, Will had a couple of, some of it was the penalty induced, but he seems to be really good, not so much against pressure, but against blitz. I think he's only thrown one interception against an out and out blitz this year. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
right.
and Al Golden loves to do that with Notre Dame. So he may need to pick his spots because Will has done really well against the
Yeah.
blitz. Moving
And
on a
then
little bit.
the interception he threw against Texas, it was a classic deal where a linebacker was just dropping pell mell,
Yep.
and Jeremiah, and
Yeah.
that was a target for Jeremiah Smith, and he just threw it a little under because Jeremiah Smith had somebody over the top of him. It was kind of happenstance. Sometimes you just don't see that drop in linebacker, even in the NFL, and but it was still a huge mistake. So
Right. So what do you think? A lot of people have said that this game will come down to, can Notre Dame run the ball to be in manageable? Can Riley Leonard run the ball to be in manageable on second, third down? Can Notre Dame turn the ball over? They lead the nation in takeaways. Can Ohio State continue its run of sacks and quarterback pressures? What do you think the X factor in this game is that may turn it in favor of either team? Really?
well, number one, I already mentioned one. I think people know the Evans kid for Notre Dame, but Ohio State has a couple of very capable tight ends who can pick up the slack, so to speak, in certain situations. You saw G. Scott Jr. the first play right out of the gate in the Rose Bowl was I had not
Mm-hmm.
I had been waiting to see them run something out of the widescreen look that wasn't a widescreen, and they did. And he got 35 yards, and boom, they
Mm-hmm.
were headed clickety clack right down the track. Um, it's interesting because I look at Notre Dame's team and they just like Ohio State on the offensive line, they're banged up, especially in the middle of the field. Tyleik Williams, number 91 for Ohio State, one of their two talented defensive tackles, along with Ty Hamilton, the TNT brothers. Uh, Ty and Ty, I call them Ty Squared. They didn't like that, but
Mm-hmm.
but the bottom but the bottom line is I think that guy is capable of having a game. I mean, I'm talking about a 5, 6, 7, 8 tackle game. You might even throw some tackles for loss in there. Uh, I think there's a guy that could be quite a disruptor. That nobody likes to talk about the DTs. Let's face it, right? Uh, I think Sawyer and Tui Moloau are primed to go out the way they wanted to, which is playing for and maybe possibly winning a national championship. So they'll be going. But you know this, and I know this. My nicknames for these two guys are the Sidewinders, and I'm talking about Ohio State's two safeties, Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom. Um, I'm a big aviation guy and auto racing guy, but an F-16 has those Sidewinder missiles, and they call it coming off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
When they fire at you, they get a heat-seeking
Right.
source. And these two guys, that second down play against Texas in the goal line stand, when Caleb Downs
Mm-hmm.
just fired off the edge, and then Lathan Ransom right behind him. Caleb Downs was so bummed he didn't make the tackle, but he forced the running back even farther wide, and Lathan Ransom finished him up along with cornerback Davison Igbinosun, but for a 7-yard loss. That made Texas quite predictable from that moment on in that drive. And of course, we know what happened on the fourth down play when Jack Sawyer
Right.
caused a fumble and returned it 83 yards for a touchdown. But those two safeties have been great erasers for Ohio State this season. Caleb Downs, I mean, I don't know how many one-handed shoestring tackles he's made, but he literally, until that play, he hadn't missed. And of course, the guy put the running back put his hands right on his face mask and shoved him down. But those are the two guys that you always have to watch when it comes to Ohio State. And the last three games, uh, Travion Henderson has had three, make it four lightning strike runs.
Mm-hmm.
One on a screen, one on a run against 66-yard run against Oregon and Rose. That was the real backbreaker. And then
Right.
and then two 20-something-yard runs against Tennessee, which supposedly had the best defensive line in the SEC this year. So dude, we start naming names of guys who could make a huge play. There's a long list for Ohio State, but they can't give up the big one. The Great
Right.
House The Lincoln Riley to Great House touchdown pass against Penn State was huge. You can't let something like that slip out the gate.
Definitely. And I think one guy who's not getting a lot of run, but has been really good is Jordan Hancock. The way that
Oh yeah,
they've brought him back more as a safety, so he's
yeah.
not, that allows Caleb to kind of freelance and play the middle of the field and do exactly what he did on that second down play.
This is a rare this is a rare moment in time for a defense when you've got three safety types. And it's funny I didn't name him because I've been naming him all year. I think he's been the really unsung riser, and he's made
Mm-hmm.
some vital plays in the middle of games, that you don't really count, right? Because you were taking a nap in the back of the car. But
Right.
the bottom line is he's made some great plays there. But all three of those guys, I'm talking about Hancock, Downs, and Ransom, are great coming up and supporting the run out of nowhere. And they've read plays extremely well. And Jordan Hancock has been really good ever since that Oregon game. They started employing him as that sneaky high safety, which they
Right.
didn't do against Oregon. And it cost them big time on 3 or 4 different plays. That's one of the main things they changed coming out of that Oregon game, the 32-31 loss. And of course, we saw the difference right in front of your eyes in the
Right.
Rose Bowl, how much of a difference the defense is playing compared to back on October the 12th.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess in finality, whether it's a score, whether you think how the game is going to shake out, give a little bit of prediction on what is going to happen on Monday night in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for both Ohio State and Notre Dame.
By the way, have you ever been there? Last time they were there 3 years ago for Ohio State, when you're on the field, you look up, you feel like you're at the bottom of a well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is way up there to the ceiling. Um,
Yeah.
Ohio State's Ohio State's got to take it classic stuff. Got to take care of the football because, like I said, man, Notre Dame, you give them a turnover and they turn it into points of some respect, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and they're killers. They just keep stacking points somehow, some way. You got to figure out a way to keep Notre Dame out of the end zone. I think when you look at this, I look at Lincoln Riley as a very good running quarterback and an average passer because sometimes he's right on target and sometimes he forgot where the target was. Uh, make him be, make him have to beat you throwing the ball, which means that Jeremiah Love, boy, he's playing. He's one of the more heroic players going right now with that right knee the way it is, and yet that was one of the greater 3 yard runs for a
Yes.
touchdown I've
Yeah.
ever seen.
That was
I'm I'm
outstanding.
I'm 70. I've been covering football since I was for 51 years now, and that was heroic. I'm going to
Yeah.
score a touchdown. I don't care, and against Penn State, but just you can't let them have those long drives. I mean, that's where Michigan had two big possessions in the fourth quarter against Ohio State and turned one of them into the game-winning field goal. And the reason it was game-winning field goal is because Ohio State blew so many chances in that game
Mm-hmm.
to extend the lead and couldn't do it. You've got to finish. Ohio State's got to finish, whether it's field goals or touchdowns. Everything's valuable in a game of this magnitude, but if you can, you got to score touchdowns against Notre Dame and make it a come from behind situation for them because I'm not sure they're maybe by eating my words. I'm not sure they're capable of getting into a shootout. You may have a different opinion. I'm talking about a continual shootout. So
Right.
that's part and parcel. I think Ohio State has the ability, but you still got to make it happen. You still got, as Ryan Day says, you can have the greatest game. You got the greatest game plan in the world. You still got to make the plays.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think the higher the score gets, obviously, that would certainly seem to favor Ohio State. If Notre Dame, if it's going into 24, 27, 30, then I think that's asking a lot of that offense that really likes to kind of grind stuff out. Well, this has been really entertaining, educational. If people want to find
Yeah.
you on Twitter, website, where is it they can go to find you?
Yeah, Twitter, I'm at Tim_May Sports, all one word, MAYSPORTS, Tim_May Sports. And then we're LettermenRoad.com. I have the Tim May Show, which I do. Well, on big game weeks, I do 2 or 3 of them, but you can find that at LettermenRoad.com and also on YouTube. Just search for it, the Tim May Show, and uh, got several guests on this week. My regular co-pilot on that show is Matt Wilhelm, a national championship and Super Bowl winning linebacker, and a couple other guys on our G. Scott Jr.'s dad. He's been a big hit with my quote fans end quote. And then Bobby Carpenter just talking about Marcus Freeman and growing up with him, in an Ohio State program, and it's just amazing. As I keep telling everybody, uh, this is the first time in history for an Asian African American head coach, and also a head coach who used to call me Mr. May.
Mhm. There you go. There you go. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Hopefully, we get the game that everybody is expecting, and we should know right around little before midnight whether or not Ohio State adds another national title to its trophy case. Thanks a lot again,
So
and we will be talking to you in the future.
you got it, man. By the way, the last time Ohio State played in Mercedes-Benz Dome, it was leading a second before midnight. I
Yep.
mean, excuse me. Yeah. No. Well, anyway, the field goal it missed. He kicked it a second before midnight, and then it landed way out of bounds a second after midnight. So Ohio
Right.
State has
Right.
some things to do there in a Cinderella fashion.
Yes, they do. Well, I for one cannot wait, and I'm hoping that Monday gets here soon. We will talk to you down the road.
You got it, brother.